fully grown women using mean girl antics for all the world to see. Why is it that women of a certain demographic behave very unladylike, undignified, and insecure when it comes to Princess Meghan? From a Goop collaborator who mocked Meghan for not using her home as a studio for her Emmy-nominated show with Love Meghan, to Kate's stylist using Meghan's fashion as a vision and mood board. Do they recognize that they are contributing to Meghan's power to pull focus? Martha Stewart was bragging that she had attended the same event that Meghan was at, and then she chose to fib that Meghan was saying, things about her summer vacation in the palace. The king does not have residence in Buckingham Palace. He lives at Highgrove, which is where the family reunion was at. And she was corrected quickly by the host of the event, who, quote, said, it's simply not true. Meghan is surrounded by people who love and protect her, so she is never going to hear about all this nonsense that's online. She'll just keep raising her babies, enjoying life with her man, and building her very celebrated brand. I wrote a bit about it. Check out my Substack, links in bio.
I had dinner with Meghan Markle the other night.
Right.
Well, she was at the same table. So I can't say, she wasn't my guest. I was a guest. We were both guests at a dinner party in California.
Okay.
And she had just gotten back from the palace. And I think I didn't talk to her really more than to say a couple words, but I know she was talking about it. If you're an actress, it's hard to then transition to a princess, and then from a princess into a homemaking guru on a television show. It doesn't sort of follow.
I'm so confused. Did this woman just contradict herself? Martha said that she barely spoke to Meghan Markle at the dinner party. However, she knows that Meghan was talking about her recent trip to the palace. Yeah. Now, I want to know, how does she know that, and why does she even care? Because a source from that party who was actually sitting next to Meghan Markle, so that person could hear every single syllable coming out of Meghan's mouth, said it was simply untrue. Then she continued saying that Meghan did not talk about her Euro vacation other than saying that the kids, the husband, the family had a great time. So Martha, are we making up things out of thin air? Because you sound very bitter, especially when you brought up Meghan Markle's career path. Like, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? At least Meghan has never been a convicted felon. I'm just saying. We're not going to act like Meghan has wore as many hats throughout her career as Martha Stewart, who was at one point a model and a stockbroker. Listen, I don't understand these older women. All of a sudden, they want to take a jab at Meghan Markle. First, it was Oprah. Now we have Martha Stewart. Like, who's next?
I am less interested in the Martha Stewart of it all. Martha can say whatever she wants. She is a free American woman, and that just means that Meghan can also say whatever she wants, especially behind closed doors, especially with her own friends. And the fact that the palace thinks that they can keep her from saying things in the comfort of her own either home or the home of someone else at a party is completely insane. Meghan did not go to the press or talk to the press about anything having to do with the royals or the palaces or anything. And so if this is hearsay or she say, this is Martha saying that she said something, that has nothing to do with the palace. Meghan is a free American woman, and so is Martha. And they can say whatever they want behind closed doors. And the fact that the British media and or King Charles, and Prince William think that they can stop her from saying whatever she wants to in private is completely deranged. We still have the First Amendment in this country, last time I checked, and she does not belong to the UK. She does not belong to the royal family. She does not belong or have to follow any of King Charles's rules. She cannot be put in the Tower for speaking to her friends about her vacation in the UK.
So it's apparent that Martha is loving all this new attention she's getting from sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. So apparently now she's saying that she overheard Meghan at a party talking bad about Charles, and she's doubling down, apparently. So naturally, I had to give my 2 sons, Martha, a convicted felon, is too old for this nonsense. Like, this lady is 85 years old, which, bless her, the fact that she's lived to be 85 is incredible, but to essentially be a mean girl at 85 is embarrassing. Like, Martha, really? This is what you're choosing to do with your time? And I feel like, yes, you guys have said it. I purposely didn't really mention it in my first video, even though I knew she was a felon. And I personally think, like, if you're going to sit here and try and smear Meghan, then yeah, we should just refer to her as convicted felon Martha.
Now, Squaddies, let's start with the Martha Stewart comments, because honestly, this is where I need to ask a very simple question. Since when did Martha Stewart become Meghan's career manager? Seriously. When Martha gave her opinion about Meghan, certain corners of the internet grabbed onto it like somebody had just handed them the final answer to the Meghan Sussex exam. Suddenly it's, see, Martha said it, so it must be true. Hold on, it's an opinion, that's all it is. Martha is entitled to her opinion, absolutely. But having an opinion about Meghan doesn't magically give someone inside knowledge about Meghan's ambitions, her plans, her abilities, or what she should be doing with her life. And that's the part that gets me. Because some people weren't interested in Martha's comments because they had suddenly discovered some deep truth. They liked the comments because they confirmed what they already wanted to believe about Meghan. That's very different. If someone already believes Meghan is doing too much, then any criticism becomes, exactly, see, I told you. But if someone praises Meghan, suddenly they're questioned. Their credentials are questioned, their motives are questioned, their judgment is questioned. Yet when somebody says something negative about Meghan, suddenly that person is treated like the world's leading authority. Come on, Squaddies, let's use the same standard in both directions. If Martha Stewart says something critical about Meghan, it's Martha's opinion. If another successful person praises Meghan, that's their opinion. Neither one automatically becomes fact just because it fits the narrative somebody prefers. And here's something else. Why are people so desperate to tell Meghan what she should be? Why does she need to choose one lane? Why does she need to stick to one thing forever? Why can't she explore different interests? Regular people do this all the time. Someone works in an office during the day and runs a small business at night. Someone starts with photography and moves into video. Someone works in television and later gets into producing. Someone launches a clothing line. Someone writes a book. Someone starts a podcast. People evolve. Nobody looks at a person trying different things and says, excuse me, you are only permitted to have one ambition for the rest of your life. But when it's Meghan, suddenly we've got a committee meeting. We need Meghan to pick one thing. Who are these people? Why are they so invested in organizing another grown woman's life? And I think this is where Meghan deserves credit. She has never been afraid to have more than one interest. She doesn't need to squeeze herself into the little box that other people designed for her. She doesn't need to say, well, this is the one thing I'm allowed to do, so I better stay here forever. No, she's allowed to grow. She's allowed to experiment. She's allowed to change direction. She's allowed to have another idea next year. And she's allowed to succeed at something somebody else didn't expect her to succeed at. That's life.
Now, Squaddies, this is where I really have to ask, who decided Meghan only gets one lane? Because apparently, Meghan is supposed to pick one thing, sit nicely in that little box, and never dare to explore anything else. But that's not how real life works. Meghan has always had different interests: entertainment, lifestyle, fashion, food, storytelling, business. She has never been somebody who fits neatly into one category. And honestly, why should she? Look at other successful people. An actor becomes a producer. Wow, they're expanding their career. A celebrity launches a business. Look at that entrepreneurial spirit. An athlete starts a company. They're building their brand. Someone moves from television into lifestyle. What an exciting new chapter. But Meghan does something different. Suddenly everybody grabs a microphone. Why can't she just stick to one thing? Squaddies, please. Since when did having ambition become a problem? And why does Meghan's ambition seem to require a public explanation every single time? She tries something new and people immediately want to know, but what is she really doing? She explores another interest. Why doesn't she focus? She succeeds at something. Well, she should have stayed with the other thing. It's like she can never simply be a woman figuring out what she enjoys and building a career around it. And here's the funny part. Most of us would love to have that freedom. Imagine telling your boss, actually, I've got another idea. I'd like to try something different. Your boss might say, absolutely, go for it. But apparently, Meghan needs to submit her 5-year plan to the British press first. Dear tabloids, please find attached my proposed career choices for 2027. Kindly approve. No, that's ridiculous. People change. People learn new skills. People discover new passions. People start businesses. People make mistakes. People try again. That's called life. And Meghan has every right to do exactly that. What really bothers me about the stay in your lane argument is that it sounds less like genuine career advice and more like a demand for Meghan to become predictable. Because if you can put somebody in a box, you know what to expect from them. You know what they're going to do. You know how they're going to behave. But Meghan keeps saying in her own way, no, I'll decide what comes next. And that independence matters. She doesn't need to spend the rest of her life being known for one job she had years ago. She doesn't need to ask whether her next project is acceptable to people who already decided they don't like her. And she certainly doesn't need to stop growing just because her critics are more comfortable with an old version of her. That's the part I think people miss. Ambition isn't supposed to make you smaller. If you have 5 ideas, explore 5 ideas. If one works, build on it. If another doesn't work, learn from it. Then try something else. That's how entrepreneurs operate. That's how creatives operate. That's how human beings operate. And if another successful person does that, people usually celebrate it. So why should Meghan be different? Why does her ambition suddenly need a warning label? Why does every new venture become evidence that she's trying too hard? I'd rather see a woman try 10 different things than sit quietly doing nothing because somebody else told her that one lane was all she was allowed to have. Because Meghan's life doesn't belong to the people watching from the sidelines. It's hers. She gets to decide what interests her. She gets to decide what she wants to build. She gets to decide when she wants to change direction. And she gets to have more than one ambition. So the next time somebody tells Meghan to stay in her lane, I'd ask them one simple question. Who gave you the keys to the road? Because Meghan isn't lost, she's exploring. And maybe that's exactly what people should be celebrating instead of constantly trying to contain her.
Now, Squaddies, this is where we need to look beyond one comment from Martha Stewart, because the bigger story is Meghan refusing to let other people decide who she's supposed to be. Think about what happened. When Meghan entered royal life, there were expectations, how she should behave, how she should dress, what she should say, what role she should play. And of course, the media had its own version of what Meghan was supposed to become. But Meghan didn't spend the rest of her life trying to squeeze herself into somebody else's idea of who she should be. Eventually, she chose a different path, and that's where things get interesting. Because once you stop relying on somebody else to define your role, they lose a certain amount of control over your story. And I think regular people understand this. We've all had somebody tell us, that's not for you, stay where you are, don't try that, why are you doing something different? Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's a boss, sometimes it's friends, and sometimes it's people who don't even know you. But here's the thing, if you spend your entire life listening to everybody else's limitations, eventually you start living their life instead of yours. And Meghan clearly wasn't prepared to do that. She didn't say, well, everyone else has decided what I should become, so I guess that's my life now. No, she started making her own choices, her own projects, her own direction, her own identity outside the institution. And that's important because independence gives you room to breathe. You can experiment, you can change your mind, you can try something and realize, you know what, I actually want to do something else. That's normal. That's how careers work. That's how businesses work. That's how life works. But when Meghan does it, people suddenly act like she's breaking some unwritten rule. Why is she doing this? Why is she doing that? Why doesn't she just stick to one thing? Squaddies, maybe because she can. Maybe she doesn't need everybody else's permission. And I think that's the part that gets under people's skin. Because a person who depends completely on an institution can be told what their role is. But somebody who walks away and starts building independently, you can't dictate every move anymore. You can complain about it, you can write about it, you can criticize it, but you can't control it. And that's why I don't think Meghan's real crime is having too many interests. Her real offense, in the eyes of some critics, seems to be refusing to make herself smaller. She could have spent years trying to prove to the British press that she's worthy. She could have constantly chased approval. She could have waited for somebody else to tell her, okay, Meghan, you're allowed to do this now. But why? She's a grown woman. She gets to decide what she wants to build. And that's a lesson regular people can understand. You don't need everyone to understand your vision before you start. You don't need everyone to approve your next move. And you definitely don't need people who already dislike you to give you permission to succeed. Because here's the funny thing, that people who complain that Meghan is doing too much are still watching everything she does. They're watching the projects, they're watching the clothes, they're watching the appearances, they're watching the businesses, they're watching the interviews, they're watching the Instagram posts. Then they tell us she's irrelevant. Well, if she's irrelevant, why are you keeping such detailed notes? That's the contradiction. Meghan isn't required to become the version of herself that makes other people comfortable. She doesn't have to stay in one lane. She doesn't have to remain frozen in the role people assigned to her years ago. And she doesn't have to shrink her ambitions just because somebody else thinks she's doing too much. She gets to evolve. She gets to experiment. She gets to build. She gets to decide what's next. And honestly, Squaddies, I think that's the real story here. Meghan didn't leave one institution just to spend the rest of her life looking for another institution to tell her who she should be. She chose herself, and maybe that's what some people still haven't figured out. Meghan isn't waiting for permission. She's building her own lane, and she doesn't need anyone else to drive the car. Thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Miles. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and join the membership. Until next time, Squaddies, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep shining. Catch you in the next episode.